Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. The reports filtering out of what remains of the PBMR company are less than promising. Joining me today to discuss the decline of what was at one time a flagship research and development program is Engineering News Senior Contributing Editor Keith Campbell. Keith, welcome to Second Take. Could you put us in the picture as to what has unfolded at the PBMR company since it was announced that government funding for the program will be slashed?
Well, all the news that we've had out of PBMR since then has been pretty bad. If you remember, in the previous financial year, the government budget for PBMR was something like 1.74 billion rand. And then in February, they announced they were cutting the budget for this current financial year, 2010-2011, to 3.6 million rand. That immediately catapulted the company, which is overwhelmingly state-owned. The American Westinghouse Electric has a minority shareholding, but it's overwhelmingly state-owned, something like 80%, directly or indirectly through institutions like the Industrial Development Corporation. So this massive cut in funding immediately put the company in a crisis situation, and they had to announce a dramatic downsizing, plans to retrench 75% of the staff complement, which was 800 people. Now, in the past few weeks, Engineering News has heard from 3 separate sources that, in fact, the downsizing is to go much further than that, and that PBMR is going to be reduced to a staff complement of only 25. The reason for this being that even with a downsizing to 200, the company would still run out of money on December 31st, or at the very latest at the end of this financial year. And that by downsizing to just 25 people, they will be able to keep it going for another 2 or 3 years. Now, the Solidarity Trade Union has also very recently indicated that they too believe that the company is being downsized to 25 people. Effectively, that means it will cease to function. It will be on a care and maintenance basis. The program will be dead.
Keith, what will happen to South African nuclear expertise?
Well, this is a tremendous blow. PBMR was South Africa's biggest nuclear program at the moment. The planned program to build a pressurized water reactor, or a series of pressurized water reactors, is frozen at the moment, has not been reactivated. So PBMR was by far the biggest game in town in South Africa. Now, there's an old joke that rocket scientists tend to like working on rockets. And the same thing applies to nuclear scientists and nuclear engineers. They tend to like working on nuclear projects. Effectively, there are no nuclear projects for them in South Africa. And so we know, both from direct communications with Engineering News and from what the Solidarity Trade Union has said more recently, that many of the people who have been or are being retrenched from PBMR are looking at, in fact, have taken up jobs overseas. So they're not only being lost to the PBMR project, they're being lost to the country. They're emigrating. And one of the great things about PBMR, which is turning into a disaster for the country, is that many of its people were young, in the late 20s, early 30s. These people are now moving overseas. A lot of them are single. They're going to meet partners overseas. They're going to get married overseas. There's a good chance, a serious chance, that many of them will never, ever return to South Africa except on holiday. It's a very severe blow indeed to the country's nuclear expertise.
Do you think it is likely that the PBMR will still be developed? And will there be a South African association should this be the case?
Well, technically, there is still going to be a PBMR company. whose function will be to protect the South African intellectual property. However, there are two problems. One, the PBMR concept is not South African. It was originally developed in Europe and taken furthest by the Germans, and South Africa got a license from the Germans to work on the PBMR. The Chinese also got a license to work on the PBMR. So the PBMR concept itself is not unique to South Africa and is not South African property. So yes, the PBMR is going to be developed by the Chinese. Regarding South Africa's involvement in intellectual property, the South Africans and Chinese developed the project in different directions. South Africa spent a long time working on the most advanced concept of direct cycle PBMR. You must understand PBMR is what's called a high temperature gas-cooled reactor. And in the PBMR design, you have helium goes through the reactor to cool the reactor. In the South African concept, the helium would have also gone straight to gas turbines to generate power, what's called a direct cycle. Normally with nuclear pressurized water reactors, conventional nuclear reactors, you have water is used to cool the reactor. The water in the reactor becomes superheated steam. That is taken to heat exchangers where the steam from the reactor turns a separate cycle, water cycle, into steam, and that second cycle drives the turbines. You can't take the water directly because it's radioactive. Now, what the Chinese did, and what the Chinese are doing, is there are plans to take the helium to heat exchangers where it turns water into steam, and the steam drives gas turbines. So the South Africans have the intellectual property on the direct cycle. The catch with that is the direct cycle can only be used for power. The big advantage of the indirect cycle is the steam could be used for power, or it could be used for what's called process heat in the petrochemicals industry. And in fact, you could design an installation where the steam was used to produce both power and process heat. So for the foreseeable future, it is likely that the indirect cycle is going to be the way that PBMRs go worldwide because of their dual function. PBMR is a small modular reactor, makes it of enormous value in industrial applications like big petrochemical plants or oil shale extraction operations. So South Africa's intellectual property on the direct cycle is likely not to be needed for quite a few years yet, if ever.
Thank you very much, Keith. That is the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis.